November 9th, 2020 Plan Commission and Commission for Citizen Involvement meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Iris, would you please call the roll?
Beckett is excused. Fisher?
Here.
Heap?
Here.
Pepe?
Here.
Simler is excused. Stewart?
Here.
Whitman?
Here.
And we have Councillor Nguyen with us.
Here.
Thank you, Iris. First on our agenda is a council update. So Councillor Nguyen, would you like to give us a council update?
Oh, certainly. Well, hello, everyone. It feels like it's been a long week and a long time since we've been together. But in any case, I wanted just to kind of recap just some of the highlights of, we've had, I think about 3 meetings. I may overlap, but you know, the 6th and the 20th of October, and then most recently the one right on election day. So most of the things that happened on the 6th and 20th were mostly just general council business, but some highlights from the October 6th meeting was we basically modified some of the permit fees and plan review fees just to make it in line with the state of Oregon's permitting system. We also reviewed some proposals for the personal services proposal for engineering service for the water system. Our water system that we have, it's getting up there in years, and so we've hired an engineering firm to give us an evaluation of the condition of our different components of our water system, some of our reservoirs, and some of the infrastructure that's part of our municipal water system. We also moved forward with a design of the intersection at G&M Pilkington. Staff had discussed with us some options that were on the table, such as a roundabout and a signal, and staff recommended putting in a signal at that intersection. So that's one of the projects that's been on the list of things that the city's wanted to do, and so it looks like we're going to be moving forward with that very soon here. And then moving on to the 20th. Yeah, we had we were basically, in terms of you know, we've heard a lot about the procurement of the design and redesign of the public golf course, and so we've executed a contract with a firm to do that, and that's in conjunction with the new rec center and potentially the swimming pool that may be going there. Those are some details we still need to finalize with this school district. We also got a study session from the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Task Force, and there was a proposal, some additional events that we're proposing for the 2021 year, which includes some different cultural events that help to highlight some of the cultural diversity that's within the city of Lake Oswego. And then moving on to, you know, we also discussed Republic Services. They are proposing a rate increase for businesses and for residents here in City of Lake Oswego. And we also discussed some additional regulatory relief with regards to restaurants in particular, about allowing awnings and canopies over the outdoor dining areas, certainly to help the businesses during this COVID period. And part of that the change was replacing the 14-day restriction on the temporary shelters to a longer time frame, so that these businesses have a way to be able to get through the winter with the COVID-19 restrictions still in place. And then we also had the lower meeting as well too. We got an update on North Anchor as well. There's going to be a couple additional meetings happening with regards to North Anchor coming up between now and the end of the year. So hopefully we'll have some news to report on that front. And then that brings us to the most recent meeting we had. That was the one that was on election day. We had a proclamation. We're now proclaiming that that the first responders also include the 911 dispatch personnel that work in LOCOM as well. So when we talk about first responders, they are also considered part of our first responders. Oh, excuse me, sorry about that. And then we also a topic that was really of the had a lot of public comment was a hearing that we had for annexation of a property that in Harrington. That's a property that's owned by Joe Buck, who has been a longtime resident here, but had acquired a property. He had put in an application to be annexed into the city. And so there was a hearing. We heard all the evidence, and there were a couple of counselors that recused themselves. Councilor Lamont and Councilor Kohlhofer recused. That left the 5 of us. And the 5 of us that remained agreed with staff to move ahead with approving the annexation. And so that won't be finalized until later this year, or probably more likely into the beginning of next year. So that was kind of a topic that was under much discussion amongst a lot of people in town. But I'm glad we got that resolved, and we're moving forward with that. So, and those are the highlights. And of course, we have the results of the election. So we also have a new council coming on board. For mayor, Joe Buck will won the most votes to be mayor. And then we also have for council, we have 3 new council members coming on board: Masen Mbu, Rachel Verdick, and looks like Aaron Rapp will be the 3rd councilor. The votes still have to be certified, but at this point, with 98% of the vote counted, it looks like that those 4 will be joining council beginning in January. So that's what I have to report to you folks.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Nguyen. Commissioners, any questions for Councilor Nguyen? None? Thank you, Councilor Nguyen.
Pleasure.
Next on the agenda is a citizen comment. Iris, was there anybody that indicated they'd like to make a citizen comment tonight?
No.
Given there's no request for citizen comment, we'll move on for the Commission for Citizen Involvement general updates. I did have one announcement I wanted to make. The Palisades Neighborhood Association meeting is going to happen Thursday, November 19th, 2020, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. It's a virtual Zoom. So if you want to get information about the meeting, you can go to the Palisades Neighborhood website, the PNA website. It's www.palisadesneighborhood.org, and the Zoom information, meeting information is there. So I encourage anyone who would like to participate in the Palisades Neighborhood Association meeting to join on November 19th at 6:30. If you have any questions, you can contact Mary Palm. Her email is meopalm@gmail.com, or Kim Beeler at kim@beelermarketing.com. So again, Palisades Neighborhood Association meeting Thursday, November 19th, 2020, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. It's a Zoom meeting. I didn't have any other updates for the Commission for Citizen Involvement.
Sure.
Yes.
Sorry.
Director Siegel, go ahead.
I do have one announcement for the
Sure.
Commission for Citizen Involvement. The general board meeting, the annual meeting of the Bryant Neighborhood Association that had been scheduled for last week and was postponed, we understand will be held on Thursday, November 12th. And so anyone who's interested in participating in that can contact the Bryant Neighborhood Association. And I believe they have a Facebook page where you can get information on that.
Well, thank you for that update, Director Siegel. No other updates for Commission for Citizen Involvement. We'll move on. Next on the agenda was the minutes. However, I think the minutes are going to be deferred to our next meeting. So we'll move on then to item number 7 on our agenda, findings, conclusions, and order. This is the Community Development Code and Comprehensive Plan Amendments. to subareas 1 and 1A of the Marylhurst campus, LU 20-0016. Public testimony is not accepted. And on October 26, 2020, the Planning Commission made a preliminary recommendation that the City Council approve the proposed code amendments, including the removal of subarea 1A from the site. The applicant agreed to remove subarea 1A to address concerns raised in public testimony. The staff coordinator is Jessica Numanoglu, planning manager. Staff, would the staff like to make some opening comments?
Chair Heap, I just wanted to mention that Planning Manager Numanoglu is here. If you have any questions about the findings, we believe that the draft findings reflect the Planning Commission's tentative decision and the issues that you had deliberated on. So, of course, we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Siegel. Commissioners, any questions for staff? I don't see any questions. Is there a motion then to approve?
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
There's a motion to approve LU 20-0016 based on staff's recommendations that were reported. There's a second. Iris, would you please call a roll?
Certainly. Fisher,
Yes.
Heap,
Yes.
Pepe,
No.
Stewart,
Yes.
Whitman. Whitman,
Yes.
thank you.
The motion's approved. Right. We'll move on. Next on our agenda is a work session. This is the Planning Commission and Commission for Citizen Involvement goals for 2021. This is our first work session. Public comments are accepted. If you wish to provide comments, it was requested that you email by noon of the day of the meeting today to receive the Zoom information. Just to do a check, Iris, do we know if anybody would like to make comments tonight?
I received no requests.
Okay. All right. Director Siegel is the coordinator for our 2021 goals session. Director Siegel, is there any comments you'd like to make?
Thank you, Chair Heap. Just briefly, I'd like to start off by noting that you did receive written comments from Carol Oakert, and those were distributed yesterday. Is that right, Iris, or today?
Today,
Today.
afternoon.
Yeah, and so the commission will have an opportunity to review those comments as well as any others that come in between now and your November 23rd meeting, where you're had planned on finalizing your goals for the City Council. Today, what I'd like to do is just start off by giving a brief recap on your 2020 work program and just highlight a few of the areas that you had set out to accomplish. And as you may recall, a number of the goals were thought of as a part of a multi-year work plan. So we expected from the beginning, even before COVID, that some of this work would extend into 2021. And in fact, that's what's happening. So just briefly, you did have ongoing updates and discussion on implementation of House Bill 2001 as the State Department of Land Conservation and Development was going through their rulemaking process. The Commission and the Council received regular updates on that work as Senior Planner Olson provided written updates that are posted on the Planning Project webpage, and also monthly oral updates. The Commission provided input in a number of policy areas, and we've gone forward and procured a consultant who will be helping the city with the first phase of that work, which is expected to start off here in just a matter of weeks, if not in the next month or so. So we're on schedule in terms of, we're on track in terms of scoping the issues around House Bill 2001. And that work will in fact extend it into 2022 as the deadline for compliance is June of 2022. So that was one of the goals was relating to housing. There's some other work that is coming up, which we'll discuss in a moment, that carries on that housing goal. A second area of emphasis was an update to the citizen involvement guidelines. And we did produce a first draft of the update, had a number of work sessions, I believe 5 work sessions with the Planning Commission over the past year or so. And that's currently pending. It's on hold as the City Council and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force do their work, because we believe that DEI will have some really important input into how you update the citizen involvement guidelines for land use planning. And incidentally, the comments that you received, written comments I referred to earlier, do relate directly to this goal area. So as the commission considers your goals for 2021, you'll want to reflect on those comments from the neighborhood associations, as well as the work that you've done to date. The third area is a goal that you've accomplished, it's complete, and that's the update to the Historic Preservation Code. City Council adopted the recommendations that you had put forth earlier this year, and that is now in effect. So we have an updated Historic Preservation Code. Fourth area related to some specific code amendments in the first edition neighborhood, the R6 zone. You just recently made your recommendation to City Council on those code changes as part of the annual Community Development Code amendments. And those are going to City Council for a public hearing coming up here, I believe, on December 1st. The next area, the fifth area, relates to Lusher Farm and management of the urban growth boundary. The Planning Commission made a recommendation to City Council on adoption of a concept plan for Lusher Farm and other adjacent city-owned properties, and the City Council approved that plan. That was submitted to Metro as part of our urban growth boundary amendment application, which is currently pending before Metro. The next area, goal 6, relates to climate change and climate resiliency. The commission conducted a work session on the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan and designated members of your commission to participate on a multi-board or multi-commission work group, focusing, I believe, on electric vehicle charging stations, and then perhaps later on onto other elements of the climate action plan. So that's an ongoing effort, and the work will continue in 2021. The seventh area is relating to traffic management requirements in the Cruiseway corridor. And this is one goal that we as staff, based on other priorities and directives from the City Council and work that was ongoing with the commission, we had to deprioritize this. It's one element of the work plan that you'll want to consider as to whether it's advancing into 2021 or not. And I'm happy to discuss that further when you get into your discussion about the goals. The 8th goal relates to telecommunication facilities. And this was another one that based on really not having any pressing applications or any urgency to this goal, it was deprioritized, and COVID probably goes without saying, but the city having to respond to COVID and going into an emergency management mode earlier this year, this was one of the victims of that we didn't begin work on small cell standards for non-right-of-way applications, although it is something that we do need to do at some point. Although, as I said again, we haven't received any applications for small cell facilities on private property so far. All of the applications have been for use of utility poles or other applications in the public right-of-way, and we do have a set of code requirements for those. The next area, goal 9, is a fairly broad goal, and it relates to natural hazards. We knew that we would be having to respond in some way to natural hazard issues. It happened to be that we had direction actually from the state of Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development and the Federal Emergency Management Agency to update our flood hazard overlay regulations. And so that is where we started with our work on natural hazards. And the commission has yet to receive a briefing or conduct a work session on this, because it's a fairly prescribed task in that we're required by FEMA to adopt their model code, or if we're going to vary from it, it's very, very narrow scope that we have to vary from it. Essentially, if the city is wanting to adopt more rigorous standards, and in some ways we are more protective in those flood hazard areas than the minimum requirements of the federal government, we're allowed to do so. But the minimum requirements are, as I said, very prescribed in the model code. So staff with the city attorney's office and the planning department have been working with our counterparts at the state and the federal government, FEMA, to review a draft update to our code. And once we have concurrence from FEMA on the content, making sure that we're meeting their minimum requirements, then we'll be prepared to begin that community process with the Planning Commission, contacting or notifying affected property owners and beginning the legislative adoption process, which I think we anticipate. We're getting close, actually. We hope to have an update and a first work session with the commission early next year. Not going to say too much about updates to the Lake Grove Village Center and West Lake Grove Design District standards, as this effort was really in some ways delegated to the Lake Grove Business Association in consultation with the affected neighborhood associations along Boones Ferry Road to examine the design standards and to come back to the Planning Commission with some areas that they would like us to focus on. So it was really a scoping effort. And I heard recently that the Lake Grove Business Association was preparing to have a meeting with, actually a meeting of their organization, where they plan on inviting representatives of the 2 or 3 neighborhood associations that are affected by those changes. So their work is in progress. And if this continues to be a goal or a priority for the Planning Commission, we would anticipate beginning work on this in the first half of 2021. The next goal, 11, relates to seasonal outdoor dining enclosures. And this goal it was initiated prior to COVID, but it happened to really complement the business assistance work that the city's doing under COVID restrictions. And the Planning Commission recommended a set of standards for the outdoor dining enclosures, and the City Council adopted that earlier this year, so those are in effect. As City Councilor Wen mentioned in his update, there is a sort of a spin-off from this work that the council has directed staff and the Planning Commission to begin development of basically a suspension of the temporary structure limitations for tents, essentially, and also to streamline the permitting process for awnings, canopies, and other outdoor dining shelters specific to COVID. So we've initiated that process, and a public hearing is scheduled before the Planning Commission on November 23rd. So your next meeting, you'll have an opportunity to hear from the public and make a recommendation to City Council on those code changes. And those were the goals, those were the 11 priority areas that the Commission had identified last year, and the Council concurred with or gave direction to proceed. Some of the items that the Commission has prioritized in the past and hoped to continue with this year, but unfortunately we're unable to deliver due to COVID, primarily were a retreat, continuation of the Planning Commission tours of neighborhoods on special topics of interest to those neighborhoods, and also additional training opportunities. Fortunately, we can offer or continue to offer training opportunities now that a lot of the professional organizations like the League of Oregon Cities and the Oregon City Planning Directors Association have moved to online training, obviously. So we'll look for opportunities like those, and I'll work with the chair to bring those opportunities to you. Those were the goals identified last year, and some of the items that are continuing into next year. If you look at the last page of the staff report, what I tried to do is just sort of break out the potential goals that are either mandated by the state or that are city council goals or council directives that for your consideration, and then separately what I'm calling discretionary projects or other projects that you have perhaps a wider span of control in your goal setting if you so choose to prioritize those. So really the three areas that we see that are a continuation that are mandated or at least subject to council direction are compliance with House Bill 2001 principally in the next year, actually the next 2 years or year and a half. And then eventually beginning in 2022 and likely continuing into 2023 is updating our housing needs analysis, which is a task that's required by House Bill 2003. So we kind of want to put 2003 off to the side in terms of goal setting, but I wanted to keep it, I wanted to make sure you're aware of that as we're updating our codes, we will also be expected to update our housing needs analysis. And it just happens that the order of those two things is it's opposite what you might think, but it has to do with the state, with the legislation. The second area of at least council goal setting in 2020 was to initiate the rezoning process for the Boones Ferry Road construction staging site so that it could be available for potential affordable housing development. Until we hear differently, that's still a goal, and staff has initiated that process. We've been in discussions with Metro and Clackamas County Housing Authority to make sure we understand the kind of the policy priorities or implementation plan for those agencies with regard to the Metro Housing Bond. And our staff, Eric Olson's the project manager on this, has also outlined a public engagement or public outreach and public involvement plan for the rezoning, which will come to you as a quasi-judicial zone change application. So it'll be processed in the same way that the Marylhurst application was processed. So you won't see this coming before you in a work session. It'll come to you as an application for a public hearing. And therefore, and because of it's a quasi-judicial application, you'll just want to be aware of that so that you can try to avoid ex parte contact. And it's different than the legislative proposals that you more typically review, and in those cases, you have a lot more freedom to get contacted by the property owners or parties to to an application. But anyway, we'll see. If the council continues to prioritize that project. And then the third area that we are required to complete is the update to the flood hazard overlay code, which I was just describing. So beyond that, it's really, and there is room in the kind of our work program, and staff has capacity beyond these three projects to take on additional work. I'll continue as you go through your goal setting. And if you have questions about kind of what the level of effort is that would be required for each of these other goals or any potential new goals that you may identify, more than happy to talk about, kind of the workload, the number of meetings that we might forecast, and really the level of effort for the Planning Commission and the community. And that concludes my presentation. I just wanted to make sure you you kind of had the full lay of the land, and happy to answer any questions.
Sure. Thank you, Director Siegel. Commissioners, any questions for Director Siegel? I see none. One question, Director Siegel. I'm not sure if we had it on the list in the past or not, but we always do our annual community development code amendment or maintenance updates. Is that something that we should list on on our goals, or is it something we normally just leave off?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd suggest that you list that on your goals, because we believe that there will be another package. It's a process improvement task. So if you're so inclined, I just didn't want to presume that that's something, that would be a goal of yours, but it is certainly something that we work on every year.
Okay. Yeah, I would make a recommendation that we add it to our list of goals, just so it shows, more of a complete picture of all the work that we'll be doing. Commissioners, any further questions for staff, Director Siegel? Or if not, I think we'd like to just step through the goals and then offer discussion on them. Well, no questions. So for the first section, again, I think as Director Siegel was saying, these are mandated or city council directed projects. So House Bills 2001 and 2003, no issues there. Although there might be one question, Director Siegel, you were saying with respect to 2003, was staff suggesting that we should separate that, or we basically leave it as House Bills 2001 and 2003? I thought maybe you had some special directions for 2003.
Well, 2003 is going to continue to evolve, because what 2003 did is it set up a statewide housing needs assessment, which the state is currently undertaking. And then from there, it's a report back to the legislature. And then the legislature is tasked with providing direction on kind of what becomes of that statewide housing needs analysis, and if there's essentially an allocation of housing need that comes from that to each local community. So I think it's important that the commission continue to track that process, so that we understand what requirements or what new requirements, if any, will come out of it. There is one element of House Bill 2003 that is a known quantity, and that is that we know that the city will be required to update its housing needs analysis by 2023. I think it's June 30th of 2023. But really, that the way that we approach our housing needs analysis will depend on this other statewide pilot project and how the legislature responds to that. So I would suggest that we just keep it together. Yeah, think of it as really a multi-year work plan that addresses the state legislation in two major phases.
Okay, thank you, Director Siegel. The next two goals were the Boones Ferry Road rezoning in the flood hazard area. Any comments commissioners have, questions? Otherwise, I think as these are kind of under this mandated or city council directed goals, again, those just stay as is too. Any comments or questions any commissioners wish to make on those? Commissioner Stewart?
Yeah, this may tie back more to what you were just discussing about House Bill 2003, but in terms of the Boones Ferry Road rezoning for affordable housing, and then the action that we discussed a couple weeks back at Marylhurst, has the city plan to kind of do either an informal or formal analysis of other potential sites such as these that might exist in the city, or would that be more in keeping with this housing needs analysis, or would that be a separate effort?
Thank you, Commissioner Stewart. That's a really good question, because the two sites that have emerged this year, the Marylhurst site and the Boones Ferry Road site, have really been more by happenstance than by planning. Although I shouldn't say that. I mean, the Boones Ferry Road site is really a kind of a strategic move, by the city council. The council's had a longstanding goal to try to produce affordable workforce housing, and it's one of the few properties that the city controls, and so it was available, and the council prioritized that. But there really hasn't been any comprehensive needs analysis beyond what we did in 2013 to identify how many units at what affordability level, at what density and location. There hasn't been any work beyond that. We have the housing needs analysis tells us, based on growth forecasts and income and other demographic information, how many units we should be planning for at 80% and below area median income, 60% and below, 30% and below. And we know that it's a large number. It's like between 800 and 900 units that the city that would need to be produced within our urban services boundary during the 2013 or 2010 to 2035 planning horizon. And so these two projects, if they come to fruition, represent a significant beginning at that. But if it's 150 units altogether, plus or minus, that's still it's only 150 out of 800 to 900 units the city has identified a need for. So we have not gone out and looked for other sites. I believe that the probably one of the outcomes of House Bill 2003, once the legislature provides the roadmap for what local jurisdictions are expected to do, I believe one of the outcomes will be having a more intentional plan about where and how affordable housing is produced. And that may require cities to look at different locations and zoning, but at this point we don't know. None of that exists. Does that make sense? It's a gray area.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Director Siegel, one other question on the Boones Ferry Road rezoning. Is it accurate to say that this would be a little bit different type of request than what we heard from Marylhurst, and that Marylhurst, it was the applicant was the Sisters of Marylhurst, and so for the Boones Ferry Road, it would actually be the city that would be the applicant, and there wouldn't be any maybe pending development that was behind it. It would be for future maybe plans of affordable housing. Is that correct?
Well, the two applications, in terms of process, would be the same process. The city, as you said, doesn't have any development plans for the property. In fact, the council, when we met with the council to ask for their direction on this, they wanted to keep their options open with the property. They saw the value in rezoning it to allow multifamily housing, which would add another use, another potential use that could be accommodated on that site, but it wouldn't remove the office zoning there potentially. So yeah, there isn't any development plan that's driving it. The city hasn't formed any agreement with prospective developers or even Metro and Clackamas County, although as the process moves along with this, if it does move forward, in order to really make the site viable for an affordable housing development, it'll be important for the city to work with its partners at Clackamas County and potentially Metro, which is where a lot of the funding is coming from right now for affordable housing. So but as far as the Planning Commission and kind of the scope and what would be coming before you, it would be the same type of application as what you saw with the sisters. Although it wouldn't be amending a specific area plan. We have a special district plan for Marylhurst. There is a design district plan for Westlake Grove. It's a little bit different, but the process would look a lot the same.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any questions on the Boones Ferry Road rezoning or the flood hazard areas? No? Next, I'd like to move on then to the discretionary projects. And this would be subject to the Plan Commission's direction and then also City Council direction. So first on the list is the citizen involvement guideline updates. And as Director Siegel had pointed out, we did receive email today from a group that's looking to, pursue a suggestion for changes for the citizen involvement guidelines and the Commission for Citizen Involvement. Commissioners, any comments you'd like to make on this goal? Any comments to the letter that we received today, the email that we received today? Vice Chair Pepe?
Having served on several or attended several of the meetings that Director Siegel and the staff had organized, I believe it was last year. Director Siegel, is that 2019, 2018? I definitely think this is something that we should have on our goal and objectives. As you can tell, I think it's going to be a very touchy subject, so I think we need to take it very thoughtfully and carefully. But I do think it's something that we should have on there and cement it as much as we possibly can, barring any unforeseen craziness that we experienced in 2020, so that it doesn't slip down to the bottom and fall off.
Thank you, Vice Chair Pepe. Commissioner Stewart, you had a comment, question?
Yeah, I mean, I would pretty much echo what Commissioner Pepe was saying. I haven't had a chance to read through this yet, but I certainly think it's a worthwhile goal to maintain on our schedule for sure.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other comments? I guess my comment would be that, yeah, I definitely think that this should be on our list of goals for 2021. I think the proposal that we received in the email today is one that we should consider. I think, the Commission would like to work closely with Council also and get direction from Council feedback on that as we go through the process. And again, I think it would be maybe one of the options that we consider. There may be other options too for what are the improvements that we make to the citizen involvement guidelines. So definitely want to consider what the Commission received, and then also when we're working on it, consider other options too, based on staff's feedback and other feedback from the public that we may receive. Yeah, Commissioner Fisher.
What is our timeline on this? Because just a quick read, I didn't get a chance to really read the letter other than a quick scan. And there's some really interesting ideas in there that I think will take a lot of discussion. So what's our timeline on this?
Director Siegel, you want to respond? I guess I can respond from the chair's point of view. I think from the goals for 2021, it would be, to make updates to the citizen involvement guidelines for what we think we can do in 2021. So by the end of the year, and then it has to be prioritized along with the other work. So, as we meet with Council, we can also get feedback on what the priorities are. But my expectation is that we would be able to make some updates in 2021, if not all of them. And if the scope goes sufficiently large enough, like our other goals, some of it may need to carry over into the next year. But the goal would be to try to get all of the updates done in 2021 that we could. Now, Director Siegel, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, only that it's a very interesting proposition, really, what the letter with the neighborhood associations are suggesting is a different, really a much broader scope of citizen involvement. That, when I look at the kind of the charter, or not the charter, but the city code for what the Planning Commission does, And what the Commission for Citizen Involvement does, it's, it's it's really a different sort of role that they're asking for. So when you look at this, if one way to look at it might be, well, this is outside of our purview, or maybe it's not something that we really address. On the other hand, you can always provide input to the city council in areas that are, not, even if it's not something that's really actionable by the planning commission or directly by the CCI as it's currently configured. One example that comes to mind is last year, the commission was approached by Respond to Racism and Hello for Love and other community members who were urging the city to form a task force on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And although it's not, the planning commission doesn't form task forces, that's the city council's purview. The commission did provide input, and I'm sure that the council took that seriously, along with all the other input that they received from the community. So I didn't want anyone to sort of prejudge what's here, because there's a lot here, and it's going to require some thought. So I guess what I would ask is, from staff's perspective, if the commissioners could come to November 23rd meeting with and be able to provide some direction one way or another. If among the alternatives that you look at as we continue to update the citizen involvement guidelines, if this is a sort of a policy area that you would want to advance to city council, that would be helpful direction. So at least we know kind of how to direct it. And that's really all that I wanted to say. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. Commissioners, any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I think the recommendation is a good one. Let's take it as our action to go back and study this for our next plan commission meeting in November, and come back with specific feedback to staff about recommendations on how the commission would like to proceed, what areas it would like to proceed on, and give more specifics just to the proposal that we received in email. All right. Next on the list is a sustainability and climate action plan implementation. Commissioners, comments or questions on this? I would just say, I think for this one, definitely like to proceed. I think the direction that staff has outlined for the Plan Commission, working with the Sustainability Advisory Board and the Sustainability Network, the Lake Oswego Sustainability Network, is the model that we'd like to proceed on, looking at specifics related to EV charging, potential, studying the issue, seeing what other jurisdictions have done in support of sustainability, and specifically EV charging for multifamily type of housing solutions there. So really kind of proceeding as staff had directed in 2021. Next, the Lake Grove Village Center and Westlake Grove design standards updates. I think as Director Siegel had mentioned, we were waiting back to hear from the Lake Grove Village Business Association. So they had, really taken it to go study the recommendations and then come back to the Plan Commission with a set to review. So I think on that, we'd like to proceed and then, just get the feedback from the Lake Grove Business Association. Commissioners, any comments or questions on that? Commissioner Stewart?
Do we have an idea of when they might come back with some information?
I unfortunately don't have a good answer to that. I think their work group is meeting, and I think they're meeting like this week or next week, and I don't know how long they're going to take to process that. Would it be helpful, perhaps at your next meeting, I could give you a clearer timeline? I think it will be in the first quarter of 2021, though, is when they'll be ready to approach you on it.
Thank you. No further questions. We'll move on to the cruiseway traffic management code revisions. Commissioners, any comments or questions on this? None. I think Director Siegel, as you were mentioning, it's just a matter of what type of priority we want to give to this. I know it got somewhat deprioritized in 2020. So feel like, happy to carry it forward, but whatever the priority that we get from council is and what staff's recommendation is based on the overall load, if we feel like the load is right to support this work, then definitely have the plan commission pick it up if staff is recommending that. If however we have a lot of work, then this just needs to be prioritized, I think, similar to the way it was in 2020.
Yeah, and just for everyone's information, there are no developments or projects that are pending or that are hanging in the balance right now because of this part of the code. The code functions. We've been applying it. I was viewing it mostly as a maintenance item, although there are policy issues that are embedded in it, and that's why it didn't go forward with the annual code amendment. So it'll take some community involvement. Frankly, what I'd like to see is a sort of a third-party technical review of the code by a professional traffic engineer or someone with expertise in the area, just so we understand what we're looking at. So, I mean, that is something that the staff could begin working on, but without really advancing any policy proposals until the commission and the community have time to process it.
Thank you, Director Siegel. No other comments or questions then on that one. So we'll move on to the regulation of small cell facilities on real property. Again, I think staff's comments here was that it looks like the code is sufficient and doing well for facilities that are in the public right of way. What this is facilities on real property. I would say that I would expect maybe this to potentially get some more attention, depending on how how work at home goes. I think there was an expectation that that the 5G would provide increased bandwidth. It would be better for those who are working from home. And as we went into the COVID work from home type of commonplace now, we've seen lots of complaints where the current facilities, at least bandwidth and working from home, has been somewhat challenging. And so there may be a potential here where the public really looks to push more in this area. So I'd say keep it on the list. I don't, as far as prioritization goes, I think we can keep it similar priority to what we had before, but I'd be concerned maybe taking it off the list, just given that 5G is really coming into play right now, and that there has been an increase in work from home. Commissioners, Vice Chair Pepe.
Yeah, I would just echo what Chair Heap said. As we know, there's been numerous companies that have actually told their workforce, you're not coming back to work until earliest would be sometime in the summer of 2021. And with the pandemic, I think there's going to be a larger workforce that is going to be able to stay home, along with schools and kids. I don't see, elementary and kindergarten are heading back, but I don't see middle school or high school heading back in January. I think it's doubtful that they're even going to be back in the springtime. So that's just going to add even more to the plate on the bandwidth. And we have an opportunity to get in front of a potential obstacle that really could impact life, business, school in Lake Oswego.
That's helpful input. What I could suggest is that we might want to have our in-house experts from the Public Works Department who have been who worked with the telecom law firms and put together the standards for the right-of-way, and they've been processing applications from small cell providers. Have them come to the Planning Commission when there's an opening, and just share what they know. If they're seeing that there's demand or that there's pressure, we could have them. Yeah, Commissioner.
Vice Chair Pape.
Is that, Director Siegel, is that something where I think it'll probably come towards the end of our discussion here, but in educational opportunities, is that something where we could schedule something potentially even outside of a commission meeting and have your experts and even others within the metro area or the state or the region help educate us on what it is we don't know that we need to know before we start making some impactful decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. We can look for some opportunities out there. There was a lot of activity around that through the National League of Cities and statewide organizations here that were providing that kind of public outreach and education. And until sometime last year, or sometime earlier this year, there were a number of lawsuits brought, I think, by some of the states that, I don't know that they've been resolved yet, but it would be good to find out where they're at. So I'll look to see what resources are out there for us.
Well, Director Siegel, would it be fair to say that maybe a first step would be just trying to frame what potential problems we may have? Because it sounds like there's two aspects of this to support, the new technologies. There's one that, as we were saying, is kind of in the public right away. And I believe what staff is saying is that our code is just fine for that. And so the question would be, for the for the plans that we have in place on public right of way, would that be sufficient to meet the demands of how the technology is changing, or should we be looking at ways that we think it's going to surpass? There's going to be a real need to go outside the public right of way and go on to real property. Would that be the first step, is to just understand, maybe get input on, can the public right of way code and implementations kind of address the growing demand in technology, or is there some thought that no, this is really going to expand into real property? I'm not sure we know that right now or not.
Yeah, we know that at least the minimum requirements, or the, I guess, the requirements under the FCC rules that we had to meet with our right-of-way ordinance are the same requirements that would apply to an ordinance on private property. They have to do with the deadline, or what's called the shot clock for issuing permits. They have to do with sort of how much cities can regulate the size and location of the facilities, and sort of prioritization of where the facilities must be allowed to go. So all of those requirements apply regardless of whether it's in the right of way or on private property. But what we should get our arms around is what's the extent of the demand for siting on private property? Because the last that I heard, really they were focusing on in the right of way, because that gave them the best sort of line of sight radio wave coverage. And of course, they only had to deal with one owner, the right of way owner, the city or the county. Or so. But yeah, we do need to find out more about where things are at today, because it's been almost a year now since we last discussed it.
Yeah, so I'd say with respect to this goal, it may just be getting an update, as you said, on just understanding where things stand, what the needs are, and then making a decision on what type of work the Plan Commission may need to do. And it could be that the Plan Commission does have work, or it could be that the Plan Commission, based on the way things are going and the input that we receive, is not something that we'd maybe work on in 2021. So I think just getting more information on, the state of the problem as it exists today and as we see it going into 2021 would be good to start with. Yeah. And then number 6, the Looser Farm Comprehensive Plan Amendments. So Director Siegel, we went through a long list of goals here. If you just refresh, so there's still work. So we did approve recommend approval on the Lusher Farm annexation, but this again would be to really update the comprehensive plan with specifics for Lusher Farm.
Yeah, if you can think about it in really three stages. So if the city's ultimate goal is to bring Lusher Farm inside the city limits, because it's not currently within the city of Lake Oswego, there are three steps. One is Metro would have to amend the urban growth boundary, and one of the requirements for doing that, one of the submittal requirements for that process is the concept plan that the city approved earlier this year that the Planning Commission reviewed. So that's step one is amend the urban growth boundary. Step two is to amend the city's comprehensive plan. And because right now the comprehensive plan of Clackamas County governs that area. So once it's brought into the UGB, then, typically there's sort of a determination as to who the governing body will be for that area ultimately. Fortunately, we have agreement among at least among our neighboring cities that, if that area were to be brought into the urban growth boundary, it would make sense for Lake Oswego, to govern that area. So step two would be for the city to amend its comprehensive plan, apply the appropriate designations over that site, probably parks and natural area or something along those lines. And also develop any zoning that would be unique to that property before it's annexed. And then the third step is annexation and application of city zoning to the property. Annexation, or the city charter has a unique provision for that area of the urban service, or that area adjacent to the urban services boundary, that says any annexation must be approved by the electorate of Lake Oswego. So that annexation, unlike any other annexation that we do, would go for a vote of the registered voters of Lake Oswego. So, I guess 4 steps when you include the vote. Right now, we're just at step 1. We've applied for UGB amendment at Metro, and if that is ultimately successful, then we would be working with you and surrounding property owners, I would imagine neighborhood associations, to develop comprehensive plan provisions for that site.
Right. Thank you for that clear update on the process. Vice Chair Pepe.
Director Siegel, if you could look into your magical crystal ball, what would be a likely timeline or time frame for the steps to fall into place prior to the Planning Commission needing to be involved?
Well, at this rate, I would have thought earlier this year, I would have thought we would be poised, to begin work on that early in 2021. COVID caused a delay in the hearings process at Metro. Frankly, we've also received some feedback from Metro staff that they have some concerns about our ability to meet some of the findings that are necessary to approve a UGB amendment. So there's some additional work that the city will need to do with Metro. And we're also exploring some other alternatives. So long way of saying, I don't expect to see this coming to the Planning Commission for the first steps, which would be scoping the comprehensive plan work, at least until the second half of 2021, if not, the third quarter of 2021. It's out there. And really what would drive it more than anything is if the city council and the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board and the Budget Committee decided that there's a project at Lusher Farm that they want to execute that requires it being brought into the city, and the soonest that would happen, of course, having gone through all 4 of these steps, wouldn't be until 2022. So, Planning Commission's work at the earliest would engage in the second half of 2021, and that would be to prepare the site for some project that the city wants to do in 2022, if not later.
Thank you. I guess based on that, I would recommend, as we have in the past, if the city council if the goal is not on the planning commission and the city council has an activity or a project that they would like to have done, they can always bring that to the planning commission and request that this be implemented or looked at right away. I would recommend for our bandwidth that we don't put this on our 2021 goals. We can keep in the back of our mind that it could come down the pipeline later in 2021, unless there's any type of work that we can do in advance of the city council, or the city council coming to us and telling us to work on it, or Metro approving it and whatnot. I don't think that there's a lot of advanced work that we could do, but that would be up to Director Siegel and his team to advise.
I was just going to say, Vice Chair Pepe, I would agree. That's why I was actually thinking that number 6, this Lucia Farm, should actually maybe be up towards the City Council directed projects on Section A. That the Plan Commission would act on it based on the direction of Council. But if we weren't directed by Council, then it wouldn't be on our list of goals. So I kind of agree with your suggestions, Vice Chair Pepe. Director Siegel, any comments from staff?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And essentially we would put it in a sort of a parking lot or a staging area, awaiting further direction and be ready to engage if and when we get the direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was it for the potential goals. We did have the operation goals that I think weren't on here. I think some of that, like we said, continue on the tours. Well, I'd really like to do that, but obviously with COVID, we're subject to COVID. So, and same thing with the retreat. It'd be nice to have a retreat. The training, as Director Siegel said, I think we could support, because there's so much virtual online training that exists today. But I would say, keep the same operational goals that we had in 2020. Just say they're subject to, what we can do given the COVID conditions that exist. I mean, if COVID gets better in the spring and the summer, we might be able to resume our tours, and we might be able to have potentially a retreat. But it's really just a matter of what happens with COVID and the conditions which we can meet and gather. Vice Chair Pepe?
Yeah, I guess this was probably directed at Director Siegel. Where are we as far as being able to meet back as a group? Keeping 6 feet probably distance apart, whether it be at the city council chambers or at another location where, if the distance needs to be greater, we can do that for training purposes or other meetings, whether it be our regular second and fourth planning commission meetings or whatnot.
Yeah, it's a good question. And in terms of where we're at in the larger, Clackamas County context of COVID phasing, we're really not any different than where we were, several months ago. I believe at last check, of the 6 metrics that Clackamas County applies in determining whether it goes to phase 2 or, phase 1 and so on, we've consistently not met at least 2 of them. And you have to meet all 6. So we're not seeing any changes at that level. It's not to say that the city council and the city administration, couldn't find a way for our advisory boards, commissions to meet in person. There is a way to do that, following CDC guidelines, and doing it responsibly. But so far, there hasn't really been an imperative to do that. So I would defer to, the council and city managers to when they feel comfortable doing that. And ultimately we'll follow the council's lead.
Thank you. Vice Chair Pepe, go ahead.
Yeah. Is Councilman still on with us? Maybe it can be asked at our next meeting. Okay.
Great. So I think that was the review of the goals. Commissioners, anything that we wanted to add or call out? I think the next steps is to really review the feedback that we got in email. Really think about the citizen involvement guideline updates and come back with specific feedback for staff at our next meeting. Director Siegel, at our next meeting, will there be a public comment accepted also? I believe so, right?
Yeah, if you would like, I mean, that's your decision. What we'll do is we'll take the input that you've provided tonight and prepare draft goals with a little bit more meat on the bones, describing some of the details, some of the guidance that you provided tonight, and then that'll be for your approval or modification if you'd like.
Sure.
So are you suggesting?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'd like to leave it open for public comments at the next meeting too. Commissioners have any input on that? Otherwise, yeah, let's leave it open for public comment.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay.
I would agree as well.
All right. Anything else that we'd like to cover for the goals, Director Siegel?
Thank you. No, this has been very helpful. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. So next, we'd like to move on to other business. There's no other business that I had. Staff, is there any other business we'd like to raise? None?
No, thank you.
All right. And next is a schedule review. Director Siegel, would you like to give us an update on the schedule?
Thank you, Chair Heap. Next meeting is November 23rd, and you do have an update on House Bill 2001 at that meeting, and a public hearing scheduled on amendments to the Community Development Code to provide regulatory relief to businesses, again, relating to COVID. So that's on deck for the 23rd. There's a regularly scheduled meeting on December 14th, but that is the only meeting that is scheduled in December. So the fourth Monday, I believe, would be on New Year's or 29th. And that concludes the schedule update.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions on the schedule? None? All right, then that's everything on our agenda tonight. So thanks to staff and all the commissioners for joining tonight. And then thanks for the input that we got from the neighborhood associations on the citizen involvement guidelines. We appreciate all that feedback, and the commission will be looking at it closely. So thank you. And with that, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Night.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.